Hello, it's Mr. Fusion, your femme-est, gremlin-est YouTube talkie person. And for once, outside of December, I actually planned my release schedule far enough in advance that I realized I could put out a video that acknowledges Pride Month. I mean, seriously, we need all the help we can get right now, and clearly it has been my channel's lack of Pride Month acknowledgement that has kept us from finally tipping the scales away from whatever hellscape we're all living in right now. But it's not my fault. What brings in my viewers? Dragon Ball. And while there are certainly more queer readings in that franchise than the totally hinged and I'm not mad bro types in my comments would like me to believe, it's still not a topic that comes up with much regularity. So, what is an unabashedly gay franchise I have covered on this channel? Ah yes, Sailor Moon, a series with so much gender-bendery wholesome deviancy that it awakened the entire millennial cohort. And while I continue to maintain that the live-action Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon is the best interpretation of Sailor Moon that has ever existed, I also have to admit it's probably the least gay. In fact, it's really not gay at all. Probably the closest it comes is Ami's unwavering devotion to and shy insistence on impressing Usagi, which, now that I think about it, yeah, that is pretty gay. And even though there's not really anything romantic between Rei and Minako, I have to admit their fraught, bickering, tragic interactions in PGSM sold me on the Rei-Nako ship. I'm getting off topic, and I haven't even gotten to the topic, but I could talk about that glorious show all day, which I have. But you know what's really gay? 90s Sailor Moon. It has something for just about everybody. The L's, the G's, the B's, and the T's. It's so gay that it's honestly kinda, oh honey, bless your heart. The few times I see a self-described fan on a Sailor Moon Facebook group say something homophobic or transphobic, it's like, have you ever engaged with the text? Well, maybe they have, but we're watching it dubbed in the 90s and early 2000s, in which case it has something for the cousins, the heteros, the totally just friends, and the what fifth story arc? Yeah, those old Sailor Moon dubs, first by DiC and then by Cloverway, really did a number on how people view the story. And I'm not here to bash it or anybody who's a fan of it. I saw it as a kid too, and there are elements of it that have a special place in my heart. I mean, its first Sailor Moon was Princess Toadstool.
I'm so sleepy. Why can't today be Saturday?
We're going to a Milli Vanilli concert, not a symphony.
What's not to love? And even though the lyrics to the theme song have been totally changed, DiC's version is an absolute bop that will never get out of my head. And as loath as I am to admit it, the phrase, fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by daylight, is iconic, and will always be associated with the show by its American fan base. But given that Sailor Moon has since been more accurately redubbed by Viz, the earlier dubs aren't easily accessible. There are a lot of you who probably don't know firsthand exactly how wild the changes could be. While everyone justifiably rags on those dubs for their queer erasure, DiC was upending the story of Sailor Moon long before Cloverway turned Haruka and Michiru into flirty cousins, Amara and Michelle. That's a change that's fairly straightforward and self-evident, but what I always wondered about the dub was how it handled the finale of the first story arc. It's a two-part story that sees the 5 main characters head to the North Pole to confront Big Bad Queen Beryl. And along the way, friendships are made, love is found, and oh, just kidding, they all die horribly. Our heroes are electrocuted, burned alive, exploded, impaled. A brainwashed tuxedo mask kicks Sailor Moon in the face and chokes her. And yeah, I always wondered how they handled that. See, I was not a dedicated Sailor Moon viewer as a kid. I lived in the Central Time Zone, which meant that TV shows aired an hour earlier than advertised. Sailor Moon came on Toonami at 3, at which point I was still in school. So occasionally I'd see it, if memory serves, on days I'd get out of school early for an orthodontist appointment. Yeah, you're looking at 5 years of braces and 26 years and counting of nightly retainer wearing. Now, Dragon Ball Z aired at 4, which was perfectly positioned for me to catch right after the bus dropped me off at home. And that's why my channel is Dragon Ball Dissection rather than Sailor Moon Spinalysis. All I knew is that in the dub, they changed it so the Sailor Scouts were not killed, but instead captured by the Negaverse. And I was just, I don't get it. Again, I grew up on dubbed Dragon Ball Z. This is not my first rodeo. Characters in that show are brutalized and killed all the time. And in those cases, they would usually have the corpse fade away and say they had gone to another dimension.
Some of our friends passed into the next dimension during a big battle.
But in that show, they actually do. We see the characters. They have halos over their heads and hang out in a fluffy cloud land and can fall down to hell. I mean, the home for infinite losers. It's been so long since I've thought about that I forgot how funny it actually is. My point is, they might change the terminology, but the outcome is still the same. Sailor Moon is making a much bigger ask. How do you go from the characters dying horribly to them being captured by the enemy? Especially when there's no footage that even remotely matches that idea. When I finally got to see this, I was blown away. I was not surprised that DiC was completely unable to sell the idea of the characters being captured. What did shock me, though, was how poorly paced the whole thing became, in a way that stripped the show of a lot of its emotional resonance, and then doubled back around to make it kinda incomprehensible. My jaw was on the floor in a way that it had not been since I was 14, and got my first Japanese Dragon Ball fan subtapes to see how different that show really was. And I became determined to, well, dissect, I guess that is what I do, exactly how the finale ended up how it did. And to do that, I'm going to need to enlist the help of my friend Dragon Ball Z, because understanding it is key to understanding what also happened to Sailor Moon. So I should say that the last 2 episodes of the first storyline of Sailor Moon are 2 of my favorite episodes. Whenever I want a good cry, which is quite frequently, I pop these in. I'm not going to say they're perfect television. The problem with killing multiple characters off in sequence is that it eventually becomes rote, to the point that even the characters seem to become genre savvy and announce, well, it's my time to run off and die now. But at its core, this is the point in the story that completes Usagi's character arc. She's always been the flightiest, least responsible, least motivated member of the group. She's not emotionally ready for this confrontation, and while her friends willingly sacrifice their lives, she's willing to sacrifice their entire mission by giving up the silver crystal to make the deaths stop. Sailor Moon is pushed to the absolute brink here, but she comes out the other side understanding what she has to do. Now, for those of you who are Dragon Ball fans, this might sound a bit similar to the final act of Dragon Ball Z's first storyline. It's an epic multi-episode battle where dear friends die one after the other as the dwindling survivors grieve and struggle to muddle through. That's what really hooked me as a kid, because I'm just a sick freak like that and like stories that emotionally engage me. Until they were revived on Cartoon Network, the dubs of both shows were subject to similar restrictive broadcast standards. The main difference is that Dragon Ball is generally much gorier than Sailor Moon. Well, Sailor Moon's manga is actually pretty intense, but let's not get into that right now. Sailor Moon's violence is usually magic beams and magic tiaras and the like. Usually only monsters get vanquished, and that didn't seem to be a problem for DiC. Funimation, on the whole, probably had more work to do to clean up its first season fights. Also, before anybody tries to correct me, the Another Dimension Home for Infinite Losers dub is Funimation's. They dubbed this material once with the Ocean cast, then dubbed it again without them. Got it? Good. Let's move on. Every single frame of blood had to be painted over for their bloodless dub. But the lack of blood doesn't really change the narrative. The bigger issue is that of corpses. As iconic as Yamcha lying dead in a crater is, we didn't get to see that in the 90s. Instead, we just got an empty crater. But even when Funimation has Piccolo fade away to another dimension, he's still able to admit to Gohan that he actually enjoyed spending time with him. The emotion of the scene is kept intact. I bring up that moment specifically because brink of death conversations with Sailor Moon are all over these 2 episodes. But in the dub, every single one of them is cut out. Sailor Moon never gets to say goodbye to her friends, which guts a lot of the emotional impact. They just disappear, their voices say an ethereal, "Well, I'm off to the Negaverse," and the show moves on.
She's with us, girls, in the Negaverse.
Lita, no, don't go! You guys, I'll be with Lita. Take care. Yeah, hot, isn't it? Ha ha! Sailor Mars!
Now, obviously you can't have these scenes if the conceit you're going with is that they've been captured, whisked away somehow in the midst of the explosion and we just blinked at the wrong time and didn't see it. But, I don't know, I guess there is a precedent. Like in the old Legend of Zelda cartoon, which was made by DiC, where Link would kill an enemy, and it would just be teleported back into Ganon's magic cloche. But you'd need some kind of footage for that. The funny thing is that earlier in this storyline, just to give one example, the villain Nephrite is violently killed and gets one of the most memorable and emotional brink of death conversations in the show's history. And unlike the heroes, he never comes back to life. Despite that, DiC's version makes no significant edits to the episode's content. Maybe that's because he's a villain, or maybe it's because he doesn't leave behind a corpse and just dissolves into pretty sparkles. Whatever the reason, that precedent clearly doesn't apply now. Instead, since DiC can't show the dying Sailor Scouts, they just reuse this one shot of the monster over and over again, so Sailor Moon has something to look at. But it's a shame because each character death accomplishes something that allows Sailor Moon to reach her goal. Jupiter, Venus, and Mars each pick off 1 or 2 of the monsters killing them so that by the time Sailor Moon is alone, there are no more enemies chasing her. Mercury doesn't kill anybody, but she does manage to destroy the illusion-creating gem that's been tricking all of them up to this point. And all of that is just kinda lost in the dub because most of this footage has to be cut. If the monsters are being defeated, I'm not even sure what happens to the last of the scouts, Sailor Mars, in the dub. Who captures her?
Yeah, hot, isn't it? Ha ha!
The only one of these death convos the dub keeps is the one with Mamoru, or Darien. But I'm not even sure what happens to him. In the original, Sailor Moon is able to break the spell on him after lots and lots of violence the dub cuts out, and Beryl is so angry she tries to impale them with a crystal. Mamoru is able to fend her off with a rose because that's just what he does. But as he shields Sailor Moon, the crystal impales him and kills him. Here, the editing to get around that is so awkward.
You got her.
Yeah, got her. Darien says he'll find her, then she leaves him behind. I guess Darien's just tired, maybe? I don't know. But DiC definitely wasn't going to keep this moment of Usagi about to kiss Mamoru's corpse, but then thinking better of it. So, like everything else, the scene just abruptly ends. So we've seen a lot of obvious candidates for cut content here, but there are also lots of other scenes that aren't violent at all, that are missing from the DiC version. Why, for example, would the show need to cut out this wholesome scene of Usagi serving dinner to her family? Well, time to bring in our friend Dragon Ball Z again, because there are some fundamental differences between the structures of these 2 shows. Dragon Ball is almost entirely serialized throughout its run. Standalone episodes are the exception rather than the rule. Episodes usually don't feature tidy wrap-ups. They just end, and the next episode picks up immediately where the previous one left off. That actually makes cutting out objectionable content a lot easier. Dubbed Dragon Ball Z episodes did not often correspond to their Japanese counterparts. It didn't matter if an episode was supposed to end at a certain point. If Funimation cut out 5 minutes from an episode and were running short, they could just pull in 5 minutes from the next episode and call it a day. Nobody was going to be able to tell the difference. As long as their first season filled the 26 episode order, they could cut out whatever they wanted. Sailor Moon doesn't work like that. Sailor Moon, by and large, is episodic. That's not to say each year doesn't have its own overarching storyline, but the individual episodes are usually standalone. There's an evil plot, there's a monster, there's a victim, save the day, the end. You can't just mix and match episodes with Sailor Moon. The entire structure would fall apart. Every episode tended to have small cuts to a degree, if for no other reason than to make room for the ever-beloved Sailor Says PSA segments.
Today started out bad for the Sailor Scouts.
Yeah, no kidding. But generally speaking, Sailor Moon was far less likely to cut big chunks out of an episode than they were to just skip episodes entirely. Due to the episodic nature of the show, you're probably not even going to notice you're missing the episode where Umino goes bad, or when Usagi's brother gets an evil pet. So Sailor Moon couldn't trim from previous episodes to make up for the cuts they had to make in the finale. It's a good thing the finale was a two-parter, otherwise I don't know how they would have handled this. See, they had to cut out so much footage to cover up the deaths that they had to cut the two-parter down to a single episode. Unfortunately, while there was too much objectionable content to fill 2 episodes, there really wasn't enough cut material to get down to a single episode. And you can probably see the problem here. Cutting out half the finale meant that DiC had to hack and slash everything, even footage that wasn't remotely objectionable. Sure, you might not miss the Tsukino family dinner scene. Yeah, the girls decide to go to the North Pole pretty quickly, but then it really starts getting unwieldy. There's actually a pretty funny scene towards the beginning where the villainous DD girls use their illusions to impersonate an imprisoned Tuxedo Mask, a trick that Sailor Moon falls for twice. The bad guys literally set up the same illusion a second time, and the girls still have to jump on Sailor Moon to stop her from running after it. Not only that, but an indignant Sailor Moon tries to compensate for her embarrassment by giving a Sailor Moon speech that's so long that Sailor Mars has to shut her up. It's honestly hilarious. And it's pretty important. When I covered the Saiyan fight in Dragon Ball Dissection, I pointed out how, at the beginning, most of the heroes treat the event like a tournament until the shock of Yamcha's death makes them realize just how serious the situation is. This is that moment for Sailor Moon. This plays like a regular Sailor Moon episode. The villains are silly, Sailor Moon is a ditz, Sailor Mars yells at her. It's all business as usual. And then Sailor Jupiter falls into the same trap and dies. The dub only has time to show one instance of fake Tuxedo Mask, so there really isn't a joke or a point. It's just a thing that happens for a second. There's a fake Tuxedo Mask, it makes Sailor Moon sad, it becomes Jupiter's love interest, then Sailor Jupiter is gone somehow. And that kind of breakneck pacing dogs the entire episode. Even if the deaths could be acknowledged, there's still not enough time to make them meaningful. It's just, whoops, I'm gone, whoops, I'm gone, whoops, I'm gone.
See you around, meatball head. I'll set you all free again, I promise.
I didn't edit that. That's literally how fast that's paced and how little time they have to devote any emotion to that scene. A mere 20 seconds pass between Sailor Mars going away and Beryl swooping Sailor Moon into her lair with the weirdest line delivery I've ever heard.
Hey!
Hey. It's probably no surprise to learn that several minutes were cut here. A dying Rei confides to Usagi that she should have kissed her love interest, something Usagi had been teasing her about before they left, a line that the dub actually keeps in with no payoff. Then there is a slow, quiet scene of Sailor Moon sitting by herself, crying over the fact that she's completely alone. Her friends appear to her as spirits who encourage her to keep going. A rousing rendition of the ending theme plays as Usagi summons her courage to meet her destiny and run the rest of the way to Beryl's hideout. It makes me cry every time I watch it. Then, in the next episode, Beryl scoops her up with a much more appropriate line read. Again, let me remind you that the dub has to pare down all of that shock, that grief, that hope, that courage to...
See you around, meatball head. I'll set you all free again, I promise.
Yikes. And this is material I have to assume was cut for time rather than for content, because they have no problem showing it in the Sailor Says segment. This is getting off the point, but I would be remiss not to mention that all of this emotion is happening in the Japanese version, and it's not even Sailor Moon's regular voice actor performing her. She was undergoing surgery at the time, so they had to temporarily replace her, which is handled so seamlessly I don't know if I ever would have even noticed. The replacement did such a good job, they later cast her as Chibiusa, Sailor Moon's future daughter. All of this leads to the iconic finale where Sailor Moon beam struggles against a transformed Queen Beryl Metalia hybrid. The spirits of all her friends join her, and they win, all accompanied by an upbeat pop song. And what song that is depends on which version you're watching. Okay, so look, I know 90s American Sailor Moon fans love Carry On. I think it's... fine. Look, I think it's impressive that DiC wrote, produced, and performed their own vocal songs, and they're often quite good. I just don't think this fits anywhere near as well as Moonlight Densetsu. Yes, Moonlight Densetsu is the same theme song you hear in every episode, but if you're going to use your theme song, the final battle is the perfect place to do it. And the show is animated to match that song. There's a moment in the song where most of the percussion drops out, and it's just the vocals. It's very ethereal. That's the moment where the ghostly hands of the other girls join with Sailor Moon, each hand in time with the music. It gives me chills. And I'm sorry, in Carry On, it just doesn't match the visuals nearly as well. If you've never heard the original, please give it a shot. Okay, so we're at the end. Beryl is defeated. This is where the dub goes completely off the rails, which is impressive given that it caught fire about 12 paragraphs ago. See, in the original, Luna worries that if Sailor Moon uses the silver crystal, it will kill her. Dialogue that is changed in the dub. And sure enough, it does not go well. Sailor Moon collapses in fatigue, the explosion that takes out Queen Beryl slowly radiates outward, engulfing every character one by one. Throughout this is a quiet inner monologue by Usagi, accompanied by a gentle piano version of the theme song where she narrates her average day, the mundane toils of being a teenager, and how she wishes to be able to go back to being a normal girl. And it would appear that the silver crystal hears that wish, as all the characters are reborn, albeit at the cost of not remembering any of their time as Sailor Guardians. And while Luna thinks that's sad, Artemis just looks at it as a chance for them all to get to know each other again. And I know I already said this in my PGSM videos, but this moment also chokes me up every time. Like I said, I watch these episodes when I want to cry. So, how do you adapt that ending when none of the characters die in the first place, when everything goes according to plan, there are no ill effects to counteract, and you only have time for half of the story in the first place?
This can't be! No! Beryl is gone, blasted back to the Negaverse. The universe is safe again thanks to you, my friends.
And they all came back safe, too.
Yes, only now they don't remember any of it.
Okay, yes, I did have to cut that down a little bit, but that is still the general impression it gives. It's paced like that scene from The Room.
The universe is safe again thanks to you, my friends.
How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change.
And they all came back safe, too.
Hi, doggy.
They can't show any of the end of the fight, so before Beryl is even finished disintegrating, they settle for this rushed narration. Beryl's gone, everything's good, don't worry about it, stop asking questions. And what are we supposed to believe is even happening? Why don't they have their memories in this version? I mean, it's so it matches what happens later in the story, but they don't give any justification for it here. Why would they lose their memories? Just try to imagine what has to happen in DiC's scenario. Sailor Moon defeats Queen Beryl and is fine. She goes back to Beryl's lair and gathers up all of her totally alive friends who were earlier captured. And then they leave the North Pole and go home, and then they lose all their memories? Or do they lose all their memories and powers the moment that Queen Beryl is defeated? I feel that would make getting home very difficult. Beryl's gone! Everything's good, don't worry about it, stop asking questions. This is a completely incomprehensible ending. You'd think nothing else could go wrong, but for some reason DiC took this as a hold my beer moment. So the final scene in the original is Usagi meeting Mamoru again for the first time. She hits him in the head with a crumpled up test, he makes fun of her for her low score, she storms off in a huff. In fact, a lot of this is reused footage from the first episode. It's a simple but effective way of proving Artemis's point, and it would be really easy to adapt into English, right? Perhaps, but where's the fun in doing that? No, get rid of the whole scene, we have a better idea.
But what about Serena and Darian?
Hi, I'm Serena, a hospital volunteer. You had a really bad accident.
This isn't a cut. It isn't a censor, it isn't bad pacing. It's an entirely different scene shoved in here. Okay, they actually take this from earlier in the episode. When Sailor Moon breaks through Mamoru's brainwashing, he has a flashback to waking up in the hospital after he lost his parents as a child, crying that he's all alone. He then appears in that same scenario at his current age, with Usagi now beside him, assuring him he's not alone. It's not something that literally happens, it's a representation of his emotional state. And it's something the dub cut for time, only to stick it in at the end and rewrite it so that it makes no sense. Why is Darian in the hospital? Oh, because of the battle before. Well, everybody got roughed up in the battle before, but nobody else is injured. He clearly doesn't know what's going on, but isn't Serena's memory wiped too? She's not even supposed to know who he is. So why is she visiting him in the hospital? How does she know he's injured? Why didn't they just use the ending they already had? I can criticize everything else, but at least I can understand the rationale behind every other change. They didn't need to do this. This is just bonkers. This is full-on it hurt itself in its confusion territory. So yeah, that's the weird, mixed-up ending of Sailor Moon's first story arc. I find it fascinating how each problem builds on the one before it until it just snowballs into something unrecognizable. I'm not in any way saying that you're wrong if this is the version of Sailor Moon you prefer. I'm not trying to take that away from you. I'm not saying there aren't elements of this dub that I'm nostalgic for. I'm just telling you what I see, because that's my job, and it's my passion. And as justifiable as you might think it was for the time, it did kind of wreck that portion of the story. Compared to the whole cousins thing, it's somehow even more invasive while not succeeding at being as ironically iconic. Heck, them using the word talent as a euphemism for boobs is more iconic.
But I'm the one with the most talent here.
Sure, queer erasure is no joke, but nomenclature aside, at least Cloverway kept the footage mostly intact, so those who could figure it out could easily read between the lines. We all knew what was going on. It was pretty obvious to anybody paying attention. We were just waiting for them to be able to admit what we had all seen for years. But that can be hard. Maybe you've been open about who you really are in your personal life for years, but having to talk about it to thousands of people is really scary. Making an announcement about it is awkward, so you kind of just go about things as normal. You're not hiding it. In fact, you're pretty open about it. Just by looking at you, people can tell something has changed, but do you really have to talk about it? Do you have to make a big thing about it? Especially right now when everything seems so scary and dangerous, when your ability to make a living is tied to people watching you, and you're already a small channel, and you've noticed that whenever you get on camera, you lose subscribers? At the same time, though, after so many years of fretting and dancing around it and being coy, wouldn't it just be a big sigh of relief to finally rip off that last Band-Aid and be done with it? Oh geez. I'm not talking about Sailor Moon anymore, am I? I'm trans. Happy Pride Month! Shut up.